About a half-hour drive from campus sits Dearfield, Colorado. Though it may look like a ghost town today, Dearfield was a bustling agricultural settlement for Black Americans in the 1920s. Now UNC has joined with half a dozen academic organizations to research and preserve the site. Reporter Will Coleman takes us for a look at the frontier community and the people working to uncover it.
The word Deer was chosen as the town's name because of the precious value of the land and community to Oliver Tucson Jackson, the town's founder. Dearfield was an experiment right in our own backyard, an African-American founded colony for other African Americans.
So that African Americans could have their own home, their own lands, and so forth. And that was the philosophy of the founder, Mr. O.T. Jackson. And so that was the goal of many black people, to own their own home and own land, because it gives you power. And also you can pass it down to your children and grandchildren.
Dearfield was extremely well known among the African American population throughout the country and was very well regarded. And it was considered to be a grand experiment that Black people could take charge of their own destinies and make opportunities for not only themselves but their families.
The Dearfield Dream Project seeks to challenge the historically white narrative of the American frontier, proving that Black Americans played a pivotal role in settling the West.
When looking at this history, you have to understand that this was done by black people, when at the same time there are people who are saying black people couldn't do this. It's impossible for them. And Dearfield showed that people like that were wrong.
These are the building blocks of history, right? You tell history from looking at documents, right? From looking at the letters and looking at these photographs. This is what lets us know what was happening in Dearfield so that we can talk about the African-American experience on the plains of northern Colorado.
Though Dearfield was far from the only African-American settlement, its popularity and success as a farming community made it a symbol of Black empowerment during a time of segregation.
So black people were moving out of the South because of segregation and coming out to the West, and many of them found their own communities. The most popular, I guess you would say, African-American farming community, everybody knew about it. It was picked up on black newspapers. It was highly successful. They did bumper crops of everything that they planted and raised out there.
The colony was important for more than just Black Americans, though. Dearfield was a diverse settlement, forming connections between various disenfranchised communities.
People from Dearfield came from all walks of life. They were not only the ones that were successful, but there were people that were just dirt poor. There were people of European background. There were people from Mexico. When we go back and look at the census, there were people from France, there were people from Denmark, people that came there to farm. And so there was really kind of a mixed international background in the Dearfield area. And when the African Americans began to buy farms and then homestead a lot of the land, they became an important part of what we call a multi-ethnic community.
They got along with their neighbors. In fact, I talked to a Mexican family that lived about a mile from Dearfield. And the mother told them on Sunday morning, be quiet, don't say anything, open the windows. And they could hear the singing from the church that went across the fields, so they could enjoy that. Squire Brockman was his name, not his title, but Squire was his name. And he was a fiddler, and his brother-in-law played the banjo. And they would have dances in Dearfield. And white people would come to the dances. So you have black and white people on the dance floor. And again, you have the rise of the Ku Klux Klan in Denver, but you have people getting along.
Dearfield started with just one man, O.T. Jackson, an entrepreneur and homesteader from Ohio.
And he was really the guiding light for the colony, particularly in its first 10 years. He was well educated. He came from Ohio. He came from a family that had college backgrounds. Things that O.T. Jackson did, though, is that he kind of swam against the current of the times, the political current of the time. In 1910, most African Americans in Colorado were Republicans. O.T. Jackson became a Democrat, and he was able to bring some African Americans to vote for Democratic candidates, including those for governor. And he was rewarded for that support of the Democratic Party by being hired by a governor in 1910 as what was called a messenger. It was an extremely high position for an African American man of the day.
Through Jackson's hard work in Dearfield and other homestead communities, he emphasized the importance of African American land ownership, an idea he adopted from famed author Booker T. Washington.
So at one point he said he was tired of seeing black people going to town, these farmers going to town, with an empty wagon and a pocket full of money, and then go back home with a full wagon and no money in their pockets. He said that they should go to town with a full wagon and empty pockets and come back with an empty wagon and full pockets. And O.T. Jackson, he really picked up on that and thought it was very, very important. Probably the majority of people came from Denver. And again, they wanted to own their own land, their own homes and so forth. Some people were very poor. They had never farmed before. So some of them had to walk part of the way from Denver to Dearfield so they could get their homestead going. And O.T. Jackson loaned them money so they could do that, because you got your land, but also you had to build a house, a 10 by 20 foot house on it.
Now, Dearfield is a passion project of a different kind. The Dearfield Dream Project has grown into a wide interdisciplinary study involving half a dozen academic organizations, including UNC, CSU, CU, and Denver's Black American West Museum. The goal is to gain a greater understanding for what life was like for people on the frontier, but also to preserve this site and its artifacts.
We support their research side. So whenever they, need to look at a photograph, then when they're trying to reconstruct what the space looked like, they can come and look at our photographs. We've digitized all the photos to make it easier for them as well. So yeah, we're providing, again, these building blocks for them to build the history from the written words, and they're going and building that history from what's left of the built environment.
Those who study history can attest, the past can be very personal to those in the present. For Professors June and Brunswig, the story of Dearfield hits close to home.
Well, I grew up on a small farm in New Jersey, but Bob Brunswig grew up on a large farm. And so we know pretty much how farmers interact and stuff like that. Kids today don't know anything about how you had to wind the clock every night.
Dearfield may soon be recognized as Colorado's 27th National Historic Site, with the 2023 Dearfield Conference just around the corner on May 20th. With so much work to be done, the team behind the Dream Project hopes future generations will continue to bring Dearfield back to life.
It'd be lovely to have some faculty who decide to do, research in this area. And George and I aren't getting any younger, so we need the next generation to be able to take over at UNC. And that's kind of what I would like to happen. We'll see.
With Bear News, I'm Will Coleman.
The Dream Project has continued for more than a decade, and Professors Jun and Brunswig invite current students and faculty to continue the Dearfield legacy.